The first recipe we're going to make is roasted Brussels sprouts, and for this recipe we want to cut our Brussels sprouts in half lengthwise. So I'll show you how to do that. I'm going to take my first Brussels sprout. It has a little bit of a tough end right here, so I'm just going to start by trimming that off. And you don't need to cut off very much, just the very end right there. You can see how thin that is. Really what you want to do is keep the core intact so that when you cut it in half lengthwise, the whole thing doesn't fall apart and you don't just have a lot of little leaves. So what I'm going to do is place that Brussels sprout down on the cutting board, hold it in place with my claw hand, and then very carefully putting the knife tip down on the cutting board, slice through it lengthwise. So there you can see we have two pretty even halves, and we'll just set those aside and keep going. Now that our Brussels sprouts have been trimmed and sliced in half lengthwise, we're ready to roast them. I'm going to lay them out on a baking sheet, and then I'll go ahead and drizzle them with about a tablespoon of oil. I'm using extra virgin olive oil, but you can use whatever cooking oil you prefer or have on hand. And then I'm going to sprinkle them with a few pinches of salt. Lastly, I'll crack a little bit of pepper on them. Before we put them in the oven, we want to toss them to make sure that the oil and spices evenly coat the Brussels sprouts. Feel free to use tongs or a spatula if you prefer. I like to use my hands because it just seems quicker and more effective. Next, we'll go ahead and place them cut side down on the baking sheet. This will really caramelize the Brussels sprout and develop the flavors, make it taste super delicious. These little leaves here will be super yummy snacks, so just leave them on the tray so that they can roast up too. They almost become like Brussels sprouts chips. Perfect, now we'll go ahead and put them in the oven, which I've preheated to 425 degrees. For the next two recipes that I'm going to show you how to make, sautéed Brussels sprouts and a raw shaved Brussels sprout salad, we're going to build upon the technique that I showed you for our roasted Brussels sprouts. So just as we did with the roasted Brussels sprouts, I'm going to take my Brussels sprout, trim off the very end, making sure to keep the core intact. I'll go ahead and slice it in half lengthwise. And now we're going to build upon this technique so that we can create thinly shaved Brussels sprouts. So what we want to do is place the flat side of the Brussels sprout down on the cutting board, And then keeping our knife tip on the cutting board, we'll thinly slice it into ribbons. And by keeping the knife tip on the cutting board, you're keeping a lot more control over the knife and making it a safe cutting technique. So with the back side of my knife, I'll just slide these over, grab the other half of the Brussels sprout, and repeat. Make a really quick and easy sautéed Brussels sprout dish. This is a super fast recipe that can be used as a side dish, or you can use it to put into pasta, to mix into rice. It's really versatile, and I love all of the different ways that you can use these sautéed Brussels sprouts. So the first thing I've gone ahead and done is just put a medium-sized sauté pan over medium heat on my stove. And to that pan, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of butter, a little bit of olive oil, and if you just want to use butter, that's totally fine too. And we're just going to wait until the butter melts and until the oils and the fats get a little bit hot before we add our Brussels sprouts. We'll go ahead and swirl that around. We want the fat to coat the bottom of the pan. So now that our fat is nice and hot and the butter has melted, we'll add our shredded Brussels sprouts to it. Make sure you get all that goodness out of the bowl. And before we toss it, we'll just add some light seasoning. So a few pinches of salt, and a little bit of black pepper. I'm going to go ahead and use tongs to toss these. These will cook up really quickly, probably about 4 or 5 minutes over medium heat. So you want to keep an eye on them and just toss them about every minute or so to make sure that they're cooking evenly. Once the Brussels sprouts are wilted and a bright green color, they're ready to be served. If you'd like, before serving, you can go ahead and squeeze in some lemon or lime juice, or even add some vinegar. I'm going to add just a little bit of a drizzle of balsamic vinegar. That acidity will add a nice brightness to the dish and just make it a little extra special. I'll go ahead and toss that in. And now it's ready to be used as a side dish, or to add to pasta or another meal, or just to be eaten as a snack. We're going to use our shaved Brussels sprouts to make a raw Brussels sprout salad. I love this salad because it holds up really well in the fridge for a few days. It's perfect for lunches, and you can bring it to family picnics or potlucks, and it doesn't get all wilty like a lot of other salads. So I'm going to go ahead and put that to the side. I've got a few mix-ins that I'm going to use in this salad. If you don't have these at home or prefer not to put them into your salad, that's totally fine. You could also swap them out for other things that you do have on hand. So I'm going to be adding dried cranberries, toasted sunflower seeds, and then grated Parmesan, and I'll be making a lemony olive oil dressing. So I'm going to go ahead and put these off to the side while I make my dressing. I love making my dressing in the bottom of my salad bowl because it means less cleanup later on. We don't have extra dirty dishes, and it just makes things all around easier. So I'm going to go ahead and start by dicing or mincing a clove of garlic. I've got about a medium to large clove of garlic here, and I'm going to take the back of my knife, or the side of my knife, and smash it. And this is just to loosen the skin. So I'll go ahead and peel the skin off, and then set that aside in my compost pile. I'll go ahead and take off just the very bottom of the garlic because it's a little bit tough and we don't want to come across that as we're eating our salad. And then again, keeping the tip of the knife down on the cutting board, just slicing that really thinly. And then we'll go ahead and mince it. So I've got my left hand, which is my non-dominant hand, on the back of the knife, and that just kind of stabilizes it as I mince this into really small pieces. And just be careful as always when you're using your knife. We'll repeat that a few times. I like to get the garlic really small for this recipe so that you're not eating big hunks of garlic, but if you don't mind, you can leave them larger. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and use the back of my knife to scrape that up and put it right into my salad bowl. And then the next thing I'm going to do is juice half of a lemon into my salad bowl. This is a really bright citrusy dressing, and it just makes everything taste really nice and come together. So that's probably about 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And I've gotten a few seeds in there, so I'll just pull those out. And then I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil, probably about 2 tablespoons. And then I'll add some salt, just a big pinch. And here's where I'll also add my dried red chili flakes. And you can add as much or as little or none of those as you'd like. And we're gonna go ahead and whisk this all together. Perfect. So now that our dressing is done, we're just going to add our other ingredients and toss it all together. So I've got my shaved Brussels sprouts here. Toasted sunflower seeds. I really love using sunflower seeds because they pack a lot of flavor and good oils, but they're also a lot less expensive than other nuts you might use. You could use walnuts or pecans or even almonds here. Those would all be great options. And then I'm going to add probably about 2 tablespoons of dried cranberries just for a little bit of sweetness to balance out that tart lemon juice. And then lastly, 2 tablespoons of grated Parmesan. This is completely optional, so if you want to keep it dairy-free, you don't have to use that at all. And then I've got a pair of tongs here to toss it all together. And just gently toss it. Really what you're looking for here is to mix all of your salad ingredients together and to make sure that the dressing evenly coats all of your yummy shaved Brussels sprouts.